Go check out the excellent collection of t-shirts available at popthreads.com and use our discount code Simpsons at checkout to save 15% on your order. It helps out our show and it saves you a little bit of dough. Thank you again for listening to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show, and thank you for supporting our sponsor, popthreads.com. Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as MrMostDaysOff, and today we are talking about the Season 4 finale, Krusty Gets Kancelled. And joining me as always, your co-host with the most, Richie theWizKid. How you doing today, Rich?
I'm feeling incredibly homeless today. I mean, I'm sitting here in my old apartment and there's almost nothing left. I'm hearing my echo bounce off all sides around me. I've got my one little chair left and my two little TV trays with my recording stuff on it, and I just feel a little homeless, man. Thank goodness the giant TV's still over here.
Did you hire clumsy student movers to help you out?
I should have. That would have made way more sense. But yes, you can always tell that we're on a season finale when it's got lots and lots of guest stars that pop up randomly. So I think this is probably the first season finale where it's going to start that trend where you get tons of guests. So, but as always, I'm sure we'll get into all of that. I'll throw it back to you, the man, the myth, the middler. It is Miles.
Did you ever know that you're my hero?
I am the wind beneath your wings.
So you already mentioned this is a bit of a celebrity fest. We've got a lot of guest stars happening in this episode. Let's go ahead and talk about that real quick. You mentioned episodes in the past that have featured many celebrities. This episode's idea actually birthed from last season's fan favorite and our favorite, Homer at the Bat. They had so much fun bringing all of those professional baseball players together and had such a good show outcome out of it that they thought they would try to recreate the magic using celebrities this time. But unfortunately, it didn't go nearly as smoothly as the Homer at the Bat episode did, whereas they had very few production issues with that episode. This one was a scheduling clusterfuck, absolute nightmare of a show in terms of trying to get all of these people into the studio. It actually took several months to get everybody in, and that even accounts for the fact that some of the celebs they had, they knew that they were going to double down on. They got the idea earlier in the season with people like Barry White and Elizabeth Taylor. Those guests actually recorded both sets of lines for both sets of episodes they were in while they were in studio the first time, but they still just had a lot of issues with various stars dropping out. The Red Hot Chili Peppers were actually a very late addition. It took a really long time as they were going through many bands trying to book somebody for the show. And it wasn't until late in the day that Red Hot Chili Peppers came in. And interestingly enough, the show almost got canceled. It was one day away from having the plug pulled on it because they could not line up celebrity guests when Bette Midler agreed to appear on the show. And that started a chain reaction where then they were able to get Johnny Carson and Hugh Hefner and the aforementioned Red Hot Chili Peppers. But this was one that it did not go nearly as smoothly as a lot of their other episodes had gone, and I do think there are signs of that in this episode ahead.
So that shows why they were so high on Bette Midler in the episode as well, I'm guessing. They make her look like an all-star for sure.
She's definitely a hero, even before she sings. So starting out with this episode, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. This is Krusty Gets Kancelled, which debuted on May 13th, 1993. The chalkboard on this one is, "I will not charge admission for the bathroom," which that's just smart business. I mean, that's an industry that people are always going to need. And the couch gag on this one is another repeat. It's where all of the Simpsons run into the living room and get caught up in a net trap. Live from Springfield Harbor, where the sewage meets the sand, it's Springfield Squares. We open up on this Springfield parody of Hollywood Squares, where we see a lot of Simpsons celebrities and some actual celebrities, like we mentioned earlier, Barry White's here as well. This is actually a parody of a real-life event where Hollywood Squares actually took over Miami Beach and had a live week, I think it was, where they actually played this show on the beach there in Miami, which, good God, that had to be hot. Like, wearing, like, all dressed up and whatnot on the beach, that would be insane.
Yeah, I'd probably fire my agent after that. You clearly don't know what's best for me and what I like, so fuck you. My favorite part of the Hollywood Squares instance is definitely with Rainier Wolfcastle, though, when he's talking about his new movie that's coming up. My son, the nerd. My son comes home from college and I find out that he's a no-good dweeby nerd.
Well, I think it was another jab at like Harvard and Yale, too, because they said specifically he came home from a pretentious East Coast school.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he did. Is it Brockman that was leading that, too, where he's like, I'm laughing already, and then Wolfcastle says, it's not a comedy.
But this interview is quickly interrupted when it's announced that a tidal wave is headed straight for Springfield. All beach-themed game shows are now indefinitely canceled.
You love those tidal waves that don't have any immediate danger to anybody, really, right?
I love this little bit here because Barry White is actually in the top corner square, and he invites everyone to come take shelter in his square. He calls down to a man that looks very much like a gentleman by the name of Cliff Charles Arquette, who is an actor who is very famously known for being on Hollywood Squares for literally decades, and he actually always had the bottom lower corner square, which was a constant running joke with the host of the show and himself.
And this is not the guy that they keep saying, like, come up here, Cliff, or whatever his name is, you gotta escape the danger. And he's like, I've been in this square for decades and I'm not moving now.
So in traditional Simpsons style, we pan out and see that this was just Bart and Homer watching television together. And after Springfield Squares ends, there is a commercial for a mysterious new something. It just says, Gabbo, Gabbo, Gabbo.
Isn't this like a great advertising gimmick?
It really is. It's just suggesting that there's this great thing coming and not actually revealing at all what it is. And the mystery is everywhere. Homer is sitting at the table reading the paper. He's trying to decipher the one clue, Gabbo is coming, when Lisa points out that he probably doesn't have enough information to solve the puzzle.
And in this day and age, the internet would ruin all of the search for answer here on this so fast. So the day before the internet, where like all you have is TV and the newspaper, and newscasters reporting on it later in the evening, it is it's a great advertisement. Way to build up this awe and energy and wondering what is this before it ever even leaks.
Homer's so determined to solve the mystery that he's going to use all of his brain power, and we get a great little section where it shows inside Homer's brain, and it's just a very smelly ass, and I mean donkey, of course, that isn't helping him solve anything.
It wasn't just like a fly buzzing noise.
It was just a like swarm of flies all over him. All over Springfield, there are ads for Gabbo everywhere, and pretty much the entire town is buzzing about what this could be. So much so that the Reverend is actually annoyed while everyone is wondering what's Gabbo. He wants to know, where is the prayer? Where's God? He wants to put religion first, and he's tired of everybody talking about this Gabbo, but when he mentions Gabbo, everybody just stops listening to him and buzzing about Gabbo again.
Everyone is saying Gabbo this and Gabbo that, but no one is saying worship this and Jericho that.
The Reverend can't stop it. It seems like nothing can stop it. Gabbo is coming, and whatever it is, it's going to be huge. And it turns out, it's a ventriloquist act. It's Gabbo...
with a very small dummy.
They announced that Gabbo will be going on at 4 o'clock in the afternoons, and Bart is immediately concerned that this cute little character could take America by storm.
All he needs is a hook.
I'm a bad little boy.
Ay caramba! Hopefully we don't need to spell out the parody in that joke there, but it's a great self-reference by Bart.
Gabbo himself is actually inspired by the movie The Great Gabbo from 1929, in which it's basically the dummy controls the ventriloquist. It's an older film. I'll be honest, I haven't seen it, but there's a lot of correlation between it and this dummy. The look of Gabbo, however, is more so to do with Howdy Doody, which was a live children's show in the 1970s that featured a puppet that looked very similar to Gabbo.
Inspiration for Toy Story.
True. Gabbo has an unusual act, though. It's not your typical ventriloquist. It sings and dances almost as if it has Pinocchio-like powers, And actually, in its initial song that he's singing and dancing, a lot of the background images are direct references to the movie Pinocchio.
Noise. Getting our little Disney charm on today. Who would have thought when you woke up you'd get to watch more Disney crap?
Who would have thought the Simpsons would make fun of Disney? One person isn't concerned about Gabbo, though, and that's Krusty. He's had others come after him before. He even crushed the Special Olympics. He receives the daily numbers, or weekly numbers, I'm not sure which, from his assistant, and he learns, though, that he lost to the Ocho, Richie, the Ocho, Channel 8.
Did you not instantly go to Simpsons Did It when you heard this joke?
I did. I immediately did the ESPN the Ocho bit.
Yep, you heard that in your head and you thought, damn it, the Simpsons did it again, way before, what's that, Dodgeball,
yeah.
Way before. I always love Krusty's demeanor, though. It's when he's actually looking at it and he goes, Channel Ocho, what the hell is that? Just the way he always says, like, what the hell is that, where he clearly has no desire, doesn't care, doesn't know, doesn't want to know.
Yeah, as long as he's winning, he doesn't even really care as long as he's getting his checks and they are actually honored. Channel 8's actually Bumblebee Man, and he does this little gag where he gets hit in the eyes with eggs, and they, of course, look like giant eyes. And I love that this is actually the first of many references to performers stealing bits from each other, because Krusty just says straight up, I'm gonna steal that.
As long as it's not from Steve Allen, then you steal my bit.
We then see Bart, Milhouse, and Nelson actually playing with Bart's slot cars, but they quickly get bored. And to be fair, I remember loving slot cars when I was a kid. I used to think those things were great, but until they started coming out with the better tracks and they were just the flat ones like that, it really was kind of boring because it was just go slow enough in the curve not to fly off the track, and that was essentially the only trick to it.
Yep.
It could get a little bit like watching things go in circles.
I never asked for those because my friends all had them, so there's no reason for them. They never did a whole lot for me.
Yeah, I thought they were cool, but they quickly got boring, I do recall. But to spice it up a bit and make this toy more interesting, Nelson suggests that they see what happens if they put the train on the tracks, and it almost instantly melts, which is actually terrifying to think about as a kid's toy. And Nelson proudly declares, let's throw some more crap on there.
That's what any kid would think, though, right?
It's 4:00 though, so the kids put down the toys and tune in to Krusty the Clown. And Krusty must be feeling a little bit threatened because he pulls out his own ventriloquist dummy, and it looks like it hasn't been used in quite some time.
That's alright, Krusty still got it though.
Essentially, the jaw of the dummy falls off, and then while trying to fix it, Krusty pokes a hole in its forehead, and he actually declares that it's dead, and then throws it into the crowd, where the kids run terrified that this zombie dummy just got thrown their way.
And then, like, when the jaw falls off, the entire audience of kids screams. When he pokes a hole in its head, all the children scream. And when he throws it, they scream even louder. It's just a great little bit. Where every possible thing that could go wrong does go wrong.
And we quickly learn that Krusty goes from confident to quite desperate very, very quickly, because he's actually announcing now that anyone who tunes into his show will receive a $40 check.
Checks will not be honored.
The whole town has fallen in love with Gabbo, including Mayor Quimby, who is giving a speech where he announces he's being honest with his townspeople. Rich, that's something we want from our politicians, right? Is honesty.
Depends on what the honesty's about.
I admit I used city money to have one of my enemies killed, but as Gabbo would say, I've been a bad little boy.
And the whole time he's smiling while he says it. Like he's literally getting away with murder and smiling about it while he says it.
It's so, yeah, he's such a piece of shit, and it's so obvious. Like he's just using this catchphrase to slide a few things. And immediately after this is a great little visual joke because a headline pops up that says, Quimby reelected by landslide. And underneath that, in very small print, it says, 2 more bodies found floating in harbor.
Yeah, surface in the harbor. We're laughing about murder.
Hey, we could be president.
Uh-oh. Anybody can be president in this day and age. Even you.
Hashtag Mr. Most Days Off for president.
Almost everybody but you. Oh, wait, no, but you're going to give me better insulin, so even you.
That's right. I know the one trick to get your vote, at least. I have the diabetic vote behind me.
And Diet Cokes.
That's right.
That's the two things I need.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to just replace water with Diet Coke. That's silly. I'm not doing that. Just in your house.
And save a ton of money for Richie.
Krusty has quickly become a shadow of his former self, and things get even worse when you learn that Itchy and Scratchy jumped ship to the Gabbo show, and we're now going to get East Europe's favorite cat and mouse duo, Worker and Parasite.
Well, kids, this is where you would watch Itchy and Scratchy, except they're on the Gabbo show now. So here's the Eastern Europe's favorite cat and mouse team, Worker and Parasite.
And then we just see the very terrible animation from 1959. Krusty's just like, what was that? And he looks
I think he does another, what the hell was that?
And the crowd just is completely empty at this point.
So he has officially hit rock bottom. Or has he?
Well, the show has officially been canceled. He has to talk to his cast, and he talks about how they're like a family, and this is going to be hard on all of them. And when Mel tries to console Krusty, all we get is a...
Shut your hole!
And this closes out our first act. It's in a dark place where Krusty is no more, and Gabbo is the new sensation in town. Since he doesn't have a job, Krusty decides to visit an old friend, another entertainer who used to have his own show, Johnny Carson. He asks Johnny for some advice, but Johnny's like, you've been on TV way longer than I was. Surely you've got a nest egg built up.
Yeah. Do they still buy hair down at the wig shop? But yeah, it's kind of weird. I actually made a note about how crazy that is that Krusty's been on TV longer than Johnny Carson. Because we all know how long Carson was on the air for, and they actually referenced the number of years here in a little while that Krusty's been on the air, and it was just like crazy to think about how long he was on the air.
And it's actually really, really cool for The Simpsons. I think this is actually one of the guests that, in a lot of ways, it's kind of weird, I realize, but this is one of the bigger stars that they ever got, for the main reason being that Johnny Carson did almost no public appearances or television appearances after he retired from his show. In fact, he only did 3. One of them was The Simpsons, the episode that we're talking about now. One was actually just a telephone call with David Letterman in 1993, and then he appeared as well in 93 on the special for Bob Hope, The First 90 Years. Outside of that, the only other thing he ever publicly did was a Teacher of the Year award. So while Johnny Carson wasn't a mega movie star, he was a face that almost every American knew well and considered in a very high regard. In fact, one of the cool things I learned when researching this, some of our older listeners may know this, but for people my age, 32 and below, I was surprised to learn that during Johnny Carson's final show, all of the other network television talk shows actually had an hour of darkness where they did not run a competing show in honor of Johnny Carson. That was for his final episode.
Wow, that's crazy. That would never happen in today's day and age.
Way too much competition. And one last little fun fact that's going to tie into somebody we're going to meet later. Also on that same last episode that we just mentioned, his guests that evening were Robin Williams and Bette Midler.
Winky Dink?
So Johnny is clearly one of Krusty's friends. He gets this advice from Krusty. Krusty has to kind of pretend like he's doing fine when he clearly isn't. There's a great gag where they're playing tennis and Johnny asks him to stay for dinner and he's like, oh, that's a shame. And he announces that he's going to be having guests. And he does it in the same manner that he would be announcing his guest on his talk show.
Yeah, tonight's guests include... And I don't remember who they are.
I don't remember that.
Miles and Richie.
That would be dope.
It'd be kind of weird, too.
Well, yeah, especially since he's dead now. He died in 2005. We want
That's what I mean.
Mr. Most Days Off and the WizKid on Zombie Carson. So Krusty has to find something to do with his time. He's now unemployed and looking to still be in the spotlight. So he auditions for Melrose Place until he goes in for a kiss and his nose squeaks. Next.
Which we know he doesn't have like that's not his actual face, but we don't know yet. Like the Simpsons haven't revealed that yet, that he actually is wearing all that makeup.
That's right, yeah, it's just how his face looks. It might still be a fake nose, but I don't think it squeaks usually, especially not the ruby-studded one he gets later.
That arrives really fast, too, by the way.
It really does.
I made a note about that.
This was not... Yeah, Amazon was not a thing then. Amazon Prime definitely wasn't.
I love the next bit where he's at the horse track. That one.
He's bet his last $10 on a horse.
And I love when he starts yelling at the horse. He's like, run, run. No, don't look at me. Run.
The horse just comes up and licks him across the face.
Yes. No, don't come over here.
So Krusty's lost it all, and Gabbo's momentum couldn't be stronger. All of the kids are tuned in to watch the show. Gabbo announces they're going to make a prank call, and Bart declares, hey, he's stealing that from Krusty.
Yeah, but Krusty stole it from Steve Allen. Isn't that the bit with Grandpa? Grandpa's like, everybody steals everything from everybody, which is so true.
A fax machine is just a waffle iron glued to a telephone.
Which is also true.
In a very mean-spirited joke, Gabbo is actually going to prank call Krusty himself. Krusty's excited at first. He thinks it's a callback for a porn audition he did. His first thing he says, though, is great. I was a little nervous that day, but I assure you, I'm all man.
And in front of his entire children audience, we've now gone over to see Gabbo.
On this children's afternoon show, they're talking about a porn audition, but they announce that they're a Japanese camera company, and they want Krusty to do a commercial for $2 million. All right, me Reiki very much. Oh God, I hope I didn't lose this. I really need this bad.
Bad enough to hit yourself over the head with your phone?
Absolutely. So yeah, in a matter of moments, Krusty is both talking about sex and extremely racist on a children's program.
Me Reiki very much. Which, what company in 92, 93 pays $2 million for a phone ad?
That's a huge amount of money. And there's a great, I mean, it's a pretty quick turnaround on this joke, but it's still really funny when Krusty, when he figures out it's a prank call, Krusty's like, hey, if this is anyone but Steve Allen, then you're ripping me off.
You're stealing my bit.
Bart is pretty mad. He's angered because this guy took a shot at his favorite entertainer. I mean, we all know that Bart loves Krusty. They've been through a lot together at this point, even though...
Everybody but Krusty knows that Bart loves Krusty, yeah.
Right. But Bart wants to get Gabbo off TV, just like Gabbo got Krusty off TV. Lisa starts to argue, though, Bart, 2 wrongs don't make a right.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
Dad!
Lisa, 2 wrongs make a right.
Homer's parenting skills at his finest.
2 wrongs don't make a right, but 3 lefts do.
Nice, that's a cool album. Isn't that Relient K?
I have no idea, man. That's just a thing I've always said since early high school.
Yeah, I there's a Christian band named Relient K that I actually really, really enjoy, despite the fact that I'm not a Christian. But their music I just find very entertaining. It's usually very funny, and I think a lot of the messages they usually tend to have are more about, like, being good to each other and less about, like, Jesus, which, you know, can be used for good or evil. Gabbo has taken over afternoon television in Springfield, but we very quickly learn that Gabbo is not the same puppet off camera as he is on.
And he's not a puppet.
Yeah, that's actually... I don't really know what Gabbo is. Because he's kind of a puppet, but he moves very freely for one. But as soon as the camera goes off the air, Gabbo declares, that ought to hold those little SOBs.
Gabbo, watch your mouth.
What? The kids in Springfield are little SOBs. Bart, in traditional shyster form, this might be my favorite sequence just because I love when Bart does stuff like this. He plays this cameraman for a fool is what he does. He comes in chuckling and laughing his ass off, and when the cameraman asks what's so funny, Bart, I think he may have learned something from Lyle Landley back in the Monorail episode, because he starts to tell him and it says, nah, this wouldn't be your thing. It's too lowbrow.
It's not for you.
The cameraman, though, is sucked in hook, line, and sinker. He is ready to bite. He declares, I'm very lowbrow, so Bart tells him there's a dirty limerick in the bathroom, and the guy declares, I've got to see this before running off. And all Bart has to do to get Gabbo back is turn the camera on when Gabbo is talking about how the kids of Springfield are just little sons of bitches. Actually, just all he says is little SOBs.
That's kind of relevant with today.
That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, I also had that note, Richie.
I honestly didn't until just now.
So, this might be slightly out of context at this point by the time you're hearing it, but it is actually September 26th today while we're recording this, and just a few short days ago is when our very beloved president declared during a storm, a hurricane disaster in one of our island territories, where people are dying left and right, but he's more focused on the game of football, which is being ruined by these silly doctors declaring that, concussions are bad and causing people major issues later in life. And more importantly, that a set of football players who are choosing a non-violent form of protest that is very clearly protected under the First Amendment. And he's going to call them little SOBs, or actually he full out said sons of bitches. Yeah. And I'm sorry to get political on a Simpsons podcast, but I really am. I try to avoid this type of talk because this should be an escape from this type of thing. But when your president is this bad, sometimes you have to take a moment and declare it because this guy is a fucking monster. Period.
It's okay to get political every now and then, man. I heard this on ESPN radio just the other day where they say, we know you guys tweet at us and send us messages saying, I listen to this show to get an escape and to go away, but this is something that's so important right now that you can't escape it and that it is going to filter through in all parts and all aspects of our lives. And it's okay for us to talk just briefly on it, just a little bit, because it's something that's important to us at this moment in time.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think that we have any risk in what we're doing in terms of we're doing a podcast about The Simpsons, and it's covered under freedom of speech, where we can say things like, fuck President Trump.
You can fuck him. I'm not going to fuck him.
But we can say things like that because of the great nation we live in and because of the rights that were granted due to being in this nation. But ultimately, I'm not concerned that we're going to have this podcast taken from us anytime soon. But at the same time, that's step one, is when you don't let people who have an opinion non-violently declare their opinion, that's when your democracy turns into tyranny, and that is absolutely what this fucker is trying to do. So,
how would you like them to protest, Mr. President?
Yeah, please, let me hear your suggestion of how they can voice their opinion as American citizens. But again, I apologize for getting political. I feel like we should shout out Chris Novembrino. That's at Chris Novembrino. He is the host of Don't Worry About the Government. If you want to hear a great politic podcast, I would highly recommend you check that one out.
Yabba dabba doo.
Back to our silly little lives watching cartoons, Rich, one that I very much hold dear. Talking about The Simpsons, we are back with Kent Brockman talking about Gabbo's very inappropriate language. He has no business saying that on or off TV, frankly. That's just his 2 cents. And he thinks the camera goes up. That ought to hold those SOBs.
I just love the very next scene where it shows in the newspaper, Brockman fired. And I'm like, yeah, but he'll be back. Brockman always comes back. I don't know if you saw that on the next newspaper or not.
Yeah, it was actually declaring both that Gabbo's still number 1, Kent Brockman's fired. So didn't it phase Gabbo even a little bit? Bart and Lisa come across Krusty at possibly his lowest point yet in the episode. He's on the street holding a sign that he'll drop his pants for free.
Hey, Krusty, are you making any money?
No, that guy's giving it away for free.
No, it ain't what it used to be. Ain't what it used to be. Ain't what it used to be.
And this is actually our first appearance of a reoccurring character. I did not know this, to be honest. I recognize him from the background. Did not know he's named. He is affectionately known as Old Jewish Man, and this was his very first, but not last appearance.
Ain't what it used to be. Ain't what it used to be. And he's doing his ain't what it used to be shimmy.
In usual Simpson kid fashion, they're trying to help Krusty get back on his feet. They head back to his apartment with him, and it is an absolute pigsty, a wreck at this point. Krusty's depressed. He says, 35 years in show business, and already nobody remembers me. Like, what's his name? And who's it? And you know, that guy always wears a shirt.
You know, what's his name? Ed Sullivan?
Yeah! But Bart notices at that point that Krusty knows a lot of celebrities, like Luke Perry.
Yeah, that's my half-brother.
He's a big TV star.
Yeah, but on Fox.
Another classic Simpsons dig at their own network. But we also see that in addition to Luke Perry, Krusty also knows Liz Taylor and Bette Midler. Bette Midler and him actually used to own a racehorse together. It was named Crudler.
This is before whatever Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie's joint name was.
Oh, that's right. This was before like the obsession with doing the combined celeb names.
Yeah.
At least to my knowledge, it was. I'm gonna say Simpsons did it. Fuck it. All of this gives Lisa an idea to save Krusty. I actually really love, before they get to work on that, Krusty turns the TV on and we see that the old Jewish man with his pants down has now got his own TV special, complete with the old man with pants down singers.
But it's not, you don't actually see it on TV. It's one of those shots where it's like you're looking at Krusty through the TV.
He's just hearing it, yeah.
And you can see like the light reflecting off his face, but you're just hearing it. Yeah, you're just hearing the, you know, see, ain't what used to be, ain't what used to be. And he just looks at the TV going, ugh.
Great bit. Lisa's plan is to recruit all of the celebrities that Krusty has worked with over the years to help him get back on his feet.
Chef Aid before Chef Aid.
Simpsons did it again. Goddamn, I didn't even think about that. You're right. Bette Midler is their first target, and I love we start with a sign that says that this 2-mile stretch of highway is cleaned by Bette Midler, who is very strongly advocating for cleaning up America's highway. I mean, we are Americans. We deserve a clean highway.
Damn straight.
Funny little fact about this is Bette Midler at the time really was very heavily involved with an organization that was to clean up our highways, and she actually requested that be a part of her character. Now, of course, The Simpsons took it to a very absurd way. Essentially, people would pass by in vehicles and they'd litter her, and she would just go like Terminator on their asses. She threw one car off of a cliff herself and then chucked a beer bottle like at least 100 yards to hit a truck that caused it to drive off a cliff and then explode.
Both things are actually really funny. The first one is Snake driving by with one of his buddies in his truck, and he throws a beer can out the car, and Bette Midler picks it up, and that's when she Terminator sprints and like jumps onto the truck and throws it back in there and causes it to wreck, and that's where he's like, oh no,
Bette Midler.
Yeah. And the second one made me laugh because the second one she just stands still and throws the can, and it hits the truck and causes it to go off the highway, and like as it's going off the highway it says, I'll get even with you, Midler, and then it blows up.
And when Bette Midler saw the final cut, she absolutely loved it. Again, she just requested that be part of the character. She didn't know that they were going to take it to that extreme, but she thought it was hilarious, and she was really happy with the final results.
I would have been too.
Yeah, it was honestly one of the funnier gags with the celebrities in this episode. Next up, we're moving on to Shelbyville, where I guess Hugh Hefner must keep a second Playboy mansion?
You could hear it being said. I thought there was like some kind of newscast voice or something that went over it saying Hefner's Shelbyville estate.
Well, there was a Shelbyville Star Tours bus going by as well.
That's right. Yeah. Yes, that's what it was. Yeah, so he has just another home, another grotto.
So I actually really dig this scene because Bart, I love anytime Bart does the Hugh impersonation with the robe and the bubble pipe, and it's even better when he's actually walking next to Hugh Hefner. So he's walking along, and Hugh says, you know, Bart, a lot of people know about the grotto and the game room, but very few know about the laboratory, or the biosphere, or the alternate energy research center.
Is that a desalination plant?
Yeah, the bunnies thought it'd be a good idea since the grotto uses so much water.
Smart bunnies, Hef. I can call you Hef, can't I?
No.
But I like that they're actually dressed in like bunny costumes while you see them working on all this stuff.
They're in like skimpy clothing with the little like bunny ear things, just like you see in the classic Playboy model design. But yeah, with lab coats. It's great. And then we're on to Moe's Tavern, where for one night only, Richie the WizKid's real-life absolute favorite band, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, are performing just one night only. I'm honestly surprised. Like, when I saw this, I fully expected Richie to be in the scene with Barney chanting Chili Willy with him.
I just love that they're like, hey, you told us, or our agent told us this place holds 30,000 people.
Yeah, there was 30,000 here last night. Now get up there and play. Bart comes along and is like, hey man, you guys want to come play the Krusty special? And Flea leans over and is like, we'll do it if you can get us out of this gig.
Hey Mo, look over there.
Alright, what am I looking at? I don't see anything. I'm gonna turn around if I don't see anything here in a little bit.
They all sneak out and Homer walks in and he goes, hey Mo, can I look too?
Yeah, it'll cost you though.
My wallet's in the car.
What an idiot. Back to the wall. Another celebrity appearance. This one, like I mentioned, was actually doubled down when she was on the series before as the voice of Maggie. Liz Taylor is seen in her home polishing her Oscars. I guess it must be her agent or butler or somebody comes up and says, Miss Taylor, a couple of kids wanted you to be on a Krusty special. I told them to buzz off.
And she's happy about it.
Well, I love her response is actually great because she just kind of has a long day's pause where she keeps polishing and finally she's like, good. So the kids have managed to round up Bette Midler, Hugh Hefner, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and even without Liz Taylor's participation, they have a star-studded lineup to help bring Krusty back. Oh yeah, and Luke Perry, that's right, Krusty's half-brother, who never is seen as his half-brother again in the rest of the series, but that's cool. The kids are off to Krusty's apartment to share the good news, and they are shocked and sad to find Krusty now officially at rock bottom. He looks like he must weigh 400 pounds, and he struggles to even get up.
I thought I'd get into shape. I've been drinking nothing but milkshakes.
You mean those diet shakes?
Uh-oh.
There's a great bit, like, when he does the uh-oh, he actually, like, deadpan looks right into the camera. It's almost like the Macaulay Culkin scene with Home Alone where he's slapping his face. It's great.
And honestly, this is my part of the episode that I didn't remember all these little snippets of him getting fat and having to get back in shape. Like, I remember what caused him to get angry with the him and Homer boxing scene, but all the other stuff about him getting back in shape, I did not remember.
I love that boxing sequence, but before we get there, the Simpsons kids actually bring Krusty to their home. Homer offers him the fold-out couch, but he starts, like, ripping the couch apart before he remembers, oh yeah, that was the last couch. This one doesn't fold out.
And where is Homer's relaxation chair that his brother Herb bought him? Because it has just been gone since that episode.
It probably broke the day after the warranty expired.
Or the day after Herb bought it for Homer.
Marge is also going to help out. She is doing what looks like jazzercise or some sort of aerobics with Krusty, and I love the little visual gag because Marge's hair is just wreaking havoc on everything that's on a shelf in the Simpsons home. Even the cat.
But Krusty looks into it.
Krusty's, like, really enjoying it. Yeah, I think that this getting his heart rate up is good for him.
Or he's just happy to be doing it next to Marge.
And Bart even helps him out by trying to get his aim back with his pie throwing. He's just a little bit off. And he finally gets it when he has to act instinctually because he gets a pie that's too hot to hold and immediately throws it without thinking and nails Homer right in the face. Initially, Homer starts screaming in pain, but then he starts licking his lips and enjoys the pie.
Delicious.
And then we get to that great boxing scene where Homer and Krusty are training together. And when Gabbo comes on, Homer is just getting pummeled by Krusty. He's absolutely going nuts on him. But then Magical Maggie sees that her dad is getting beat, so she changes the channel to see if she can help the situation. And what could almost, if by spell, come on the screen? The thing that would get Homer in the right mindset to turn the tables. The price of pork is skyrocketing.
Whap, 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 whap.
Homer then just starts wailing on Krusty. I actually think this is a really great shot. Like the whole sequence is really, really funny. Yeah. Especially they continue the boxing or Rocky theme. In the next scene, they're in the kitchen and we see Krusty's continuing to train in that Rocky style where he's actually punching the slab of meat. And then when they pan out, Homer's on the other side eating that same slab of meat.
All very brief jokes, but they play very, very well.
There's only one thing missing from the comeback special, something that's really important to Krusty. He reaches out to his old friend and sidekick, Sideshow Mel. But Mel's happy at his new employer. He doesn't have to be degraded on a regular basis. Nobody's dumped liquid nitrogen down his pants and cracked his butt with a hammer, Rich.
You can never have enough butt cracks, right?
He's actually working at a fast food joint alongside squeaky-voiced teen, but he does have a very nice boss who even offers to help take care of this clown, referring to Krusty.
Mr. Johansson takes very good care of me, Krusty.
So instead, we're going to get Sideshow Luke Perry. But during auditions, when they're making balloon animals, Krusty makes a very simple horsey, and Luke Perry makes a functioning 19th century carousel.
It's just not working out.
I love that he's just instantly really good at balloon art. Like, this is just a hobby of his on the side.
Yeah, steal my bit, will you?
Krusty's pissed and kicks him off the show, because he doesn't want to be upstage. But Luke's like, surely we can find something for me. I mean, let's do it for Mom.
But then he has that dream sequence where he pictures firing him out of a cannon into a brick wall.
And, like, fucking his face up. He's on U.S. Peephole magazine with his, like, face all messed up.
Luke Perry's new face.
Rehearsals are over, and it's time for the show. We get a song that's near and dear to our heart from our 50th podcast special that we did. Krusty sings, "Send in the Clowns." And we get a surprise return. Mel, who previously turned him down, comes out and joins Krusty on stage, and even declares, "I love you, Krusty."
Quiet.
So they legitimately do shoot Luke Perry out of a cannon, but they opted to go with a safety net instead of a brick wall. But it doesn't matter because they miss and end up shooting him through a brick wall. And then also through a sandpaper factory, and then also through the Quickie Mart, where Apu is having a sell on acid. It's half off, and he just worked to neatly stack it in the center of his store. Luke Perry flies through it screaming, and I love Apu's actually, like, really pissed off because his display just got destroyed. Finally, things get better when Luke Perry lands in a pillow factory.
And all's well that ends well.
Except that pillow factory is being destroyed today, and it all comes crumbling down on top of him. Great little in joke. You may remember it wasn't that long ago that the Simpsons switched animation studios from Class Bisuco to New Roman or something Roman, whatever it is. It used to be Class Bisuco, and that pillow factory that gets destroyed is modeled on the Class Bisuco studios that is no longer there, but at the time that this aired, it was still standing outside Los Angeles.
A little nice inside jab there. Then when it shows Arthur Crandall and Gabbo across the streets, they actually make the second Ray J. Johnson joke in the episode, where he's like, look at all these stars he got. Hugh Hefner, Bette Midler, Luke Perry. Who do we have today? Ray J. Johnson. And it's the second Ray J.
Aye.
You can call me Ray, or you can call me Jay. That's Ray J. Johnson.
So, Ray J. Johnson is actually a real-life comedian. A lot of people say that that's using the term loosely in terms of comedian, because a lot of people think that Bart's initial description earlier in the episode of his act is actually quite accurate, that it gets old very, very quickly. I think it was actually Krusty's description, excuse me.
Yeah.
Regardless, something fun to note, Ray J. Johnson will actually himself make an appearance on The Simpsons at some point in the future, and in the commentary, they said they actually felt bad that they not only hit him that hard in this episode, they made a very strong joke about him, and then they actually repeated it later in the episode. We also get a Red Hot Chili Peppers performance, which apparently there is a lot of struggles. I mentioned there is a lot of issues with this episode production-wise. Getting the rights to this song, I don't know exactly what the holdup was, but there was some sort of issue with the record label that it was last minute that they actually were able to put this song in. I don't think we mentioned it earlier, but there's a great bit where Krusty asked the Red Hot Chili Peppers if they could change their lyrics just a little bit. Hey man, our lyrics are like our children. We wouldn't change them for nothing.
Well, okay, but here's where you say, what I got you gotta get it, put it in you. How about just, what I'd like to hug and kiss you.
Wow, that's way better.
Everyone
can appreciate that.
Which, side note, it took me a second to recognize the fourth member of the Chili Peppers in this because it was Eric Marshall, who was only in the band for like a year, basically, and he actually never recorded on any albums.
Huh.
He just did one of the music videos, but he was only briefly with the band because I could recognize Chad Smith and Anthony Kiedis and Flea, but Eric Marshall did not recognize him. And there's about 2 or 3 members that will be in the Chili Peppers just for a very brief stint of time that aren't actually considered full band members. So that's like, I don't know, you probably don't remember any of the members at all besides Anthony Kiedis and Flea, but
yep, that's absolutely the case.
But yeah, it took me a while to recognize Eric, and I actually I didn't click until I was reading the notes on the episode and I saw his name in there. For some reason, I thought it was just a short-haired Frusciante for a second, but
how fortunate of that guy to be with the band when they happen to be on The Simpsons. I mean, that's pretty fucking sick right there.
Yeah, if you look online, it just happened to coincide with when they recorded this too. So
that's just really good timing for that guy.
Yeah.
I love during their performance in classic Chili Pepper style. They're actually wearing more than they used to. They're wearing whitey tighties on stage and rocking out. Krusty's like, oh, how degrading to have to perform and dance around in your underwear.
30 seconds till your little stinker sketch.
Hey, somebody get me a bigger lolly. Krusty the Clown welcomes Johnny Carson to the stage and asks, so Johnny, what's it going to be tonight? You going to do a little bit of magic? Maybe some jokes? No, I'm going to lift this 1987 Buick over my head. And then we see him juggling a car in the background as if it were nothing.
Hey, Johnny Carson was the man, okay?
We get a very brief moment where Liz Taylor is now having a little bit of regret for not doing the show. She's actually watching and seeing how good it is, and she declares that she's going to have to fire that agent.
And then keeps polishing her massively huge carat diamond ring.
Yeah. She looks through it, and it's got like 1,000 facets on it.
It's doing like that. Is that Peter and the Wolf or whatever that song is playing in the background?
Yeah, it's actually Hugh Hefner performing Peter and the Wolf.
That's right.
Using it was using wine glasses filled up to various lengths of water, like people will do, or they rub the rim.
Making all the celebrities that actually appeared on the show look very, very good.
Yeah, absolutely. Another quick bit about Johnny Carson before we move on is when Johnny Carson was first offered the role, the initial bit they had for him was he was going to be a celebrity who ended up moving in with the Simpsons and then refusing to leave. And he basically came off as a big mooch, and he just really didn't like it. Like I don't know that he flat out refused to do it, but he did not respond positively to it. So they ended up writing the exact opposite, where they just made him pretty much awesome in every way.
I was going to say, like, the way they display him in this episode, it almost seemed like they were afraid to make fun of him, but that makes a little more sense now on why they would go straight that route.
Yeah, just make sure that he's good to go, especially with all the issues they were having booking celebrities at this point.
Right.
And then we get Bette Midler and Krusty singing together, You Are the Wind Beneath My Wings, which is actually a parody of Bette Midler's real appearance on the Johnny Carson show, where they actually sang that together.
And I just love how Krusty actually sings, because I am the wind beneath your wings, while Bette Midler singing it the right way.
Right. Bette Midler congratulates Krusty on a great show. She says, you deserve an Emmy for this. Forget it. The Academy hates me. I don't know why that old bunch of dinosaurs wouldn't know entertainment if it bit them in the... Hey!
Krusty gets a lot of those lines, and it never gets old to me. I like it every time I hear it. Where he gets cut off mid-sentence to go back on live television.
Well, it's kind of like the talk to the audience bit that we love so much. Like, oh, talk to the audience, just after he got done saying it's my favorite part of the show. Krusty has some good cue card moments.
Yeah.
But the show was a hit, and they're throwing a celebration at Moe's Tavern to honor Krusty.
It holds 30,000 people.
Everybody's there. I love it. Starts out with, we see Hugh Hefner on the first appearance of the Love Machine, I believe. And he turns out to be a cold fish. The love tester, excuse me.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Johnny Carson is counseling Krusty at the bar, saying, Krusty, I hope you learned your lesson and that you're going to save your money this time.
Krusty, here's that ruby-studded clown nose you ordered. Again, how did it arrive so fast? Because he didn't have the money 5 minutes ago.
Next up, the Red Hot Chili Peppers all walk in, and they are very happy to see Mo. I actually really love Flea. He's like, hey, Mo! He yells it out.
I guess they were just on a high from that performance they gave.
Apparently, they had a really hard time with Flea saying the word "fuck" in studio too much. They essentially had to be like, "Dude, we don't say that on this show. You can't do that."
And just the song they perform is "Give It Away" in this one. And just in case you didn't know, I'm going to throw out some Chili Pepper knowledge. "Give It Away" was actually inspired by Cher, because Cher used to babysit Anthony Kiedis when he was younger, and she talked to him about not having to have worldly possessions, that you should just give it away. And that's actually the initial inspiration behind Give It Away.
I think I remember reading that when I borrowed his biography from you.
Yeah, Scar Tissue.
Yeah, that was a really good read.
It was. Shout out to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You're still relevant and awesome in my eyes. Every time I go to the bar, someone still plays your songs.
I love that Mo is getting on to him. You can't dress like that in here, because they're still wearing their whitey-tighties, and Wiggum and Hibbert are sitting at the bar, also in their underwear, saying, get with the times, Mo. Wiggum's like, if it feels good, do it.
Slap!
Hey, don't snap my undies.
Good old Dr. Hibbert. Which, you think Mo would just be happy to have customers.
Right. Krusty is thanking the kids, but he actually gets really pissed off when they're like, oh, it's okay, Krusty. We actually got 50% of the t-shirt sales. What? And he freaks out on him.
He's like, what the hey, you deserve it.
Which they really do, man.
Yes.
They really, really do.
Absolutely. They deserve their own ruby-studded clown noses.
And the episode ends with Bart talking to his hero. Krusty, you might be the greatest entertainer in the entire world. Except for maybe that guy. And he points over to Johnny Carson, who's balancing tables and chairs, and Grandpa Simpson and Jasper on top of his head, while I think juggling, dancing, singing.
No, he's playing the accordion.
Yeah, that's right. He's playing the Simpsons theme on the accordion. And they kind of try to mirror, I felt like. It had a very similar vibe, once again, to Homer at the Bat, where they had this portrait of all these celebrities. But I love in this instance that in the very, very back, you could see peering through the window, on the outside looking in, Elizabeth Taylor was peeking through the glass, wishing she was part of the festivities.
It was a great little last shot there.
And that does bring us to the end of Krusty Gets Kancelled, and to the end of Season 4, Rich. Is there anything that you would like to add about this episode before we head out?
Well, my guidebook here, The Simpsons, A Complete Guide to Our Favorite Family, had a real interesting story about the bit with Kent Brockman and Gabbo talking about those little SOBs. And I'm going to read this here. Gabbo's line, that ought to hold the little SOBs, spoken after the camera has been turned off, and it was repeated by Brockman, is actually taken from a 1950s kiddie show in which the host asked, are we off the air? And then said, that ought to hold the little SOBs for another week.
Oh, that's great.
He did not know he was still on the air and was.
Oh, wow, that's actually really great.
Yeah, and then the newspaper articles that came out as Gabbo was getting successful was Gabbo, Fabbo, Krusty, Rusty. And the last one I had was the Springfield Shopper headline, Krusty's special airs today, features a smaller headline further down the article that says, Gabbo to have real boy operation today. There is a point where Gabbo gets off of his user's hands and walks around. So maybe that was after the real boy procedure.
Like everything in The Simpsons, we don't know the continuity line of when things are happening.
And then the ratings on the love tester, I forgot about that. There's hot tamale, Casanova, hubba hubba, lukewarm fish, and then cold fish, which is what Hefner was. But besides that, man, this episode still holds up pretty well. It's, from a note-taking standpoint, the last act just kind of flew by. There wasn't, there was a lot going on screen, but kind of behind the scenes, it didn't quite feel like there was so much going on, which is just weird, because I'm used to having, not enough space for notes at the end of my note-taking, but this one was just it was a fun little ride for the end.
For me, this episode, I will say I feel maybe the opposite of how I did last week. I actually, just based on it being a Krusty episode, I had really high hopes, and I didn't remember a lot of it, but I remembered liking it. However, I think my expectations made this one not really hold up as much as I remembered. Like, again, last week when we discussed Marge and Chains, it was interesting that I had lower expectations and ended up really enjoying the episode. Whereas this one I had higher expectations and it kind of disappointed, frankly. It wasn't up to snuff with some of the episodes we've seen lately, in my opinion. It did have a lot of fun celebrity appearances, and I have to say, I actually enjoyed researching this episode more than I enjoyed my initial watch through of it.
That makes a lot of sense with all the behind-the-scenes stuff going on for this one, too, in particular.
There's a ton. So, a couple more things on that. I just mentioned Marge and Chains. After coming from a Marge-centric episode, I think it's interesting to point out that Marge had no speaking lines in this episode.
Oh, wow.
And also, I mentioned the production hell they were going through. They had many other celebrities lined up that ended up falling through. They had last-minute replacements. They had a lot of shit happening. At one point, they actually had written a part for every living ex-president that they could. Literally, every single ex-president that was still alive, they wrote a part and offered it to them. And they were turned down ultimately by everyone. However, Ronald Reagan actually expressed interest in doing it after it was initially offered, though ultimately he did end up turning them down, though he did it with a personal written letter to them, and they said that they still have it to this day, and it was one of the nicest rejections they've ever received.
I mean, Reagan was an actor before he was president, so it makes sense that if one was going to bite a little bit, that it might be him.
Honestly, as much as it's sad to think about in some ways. Regardless of your political beliefs on Reagan, the end of that man's life would not go very well. He was a sufferer of Alzheimer's. And I do wonder if at 1993, I don't think that at that time, I think that may have been where he was starting to have some issues in terms of that horrible disease that he dealt with.
Maybe that's playing into why he had to reject going on the show.
That was my initial thought.
I'm wondering if maybe they just had a bit where it flashed through Krusty's old episodes real quickly, and you saw little bits with him with each president, and it just kept doing a bit for 20 seconds where it was doing that maybe.
They mentioned on the director's commentary some of the rejected ideas that they had, and they pointed out that they wrote the most respectful possible parts they could. They were not taking any jabs at these guys because they knew that it was a pretty tall order that they were going for. It wasn't going to be just a, casual encounter. These were prominent, older men who have had successful political careers, and it wasn't probably going to be easy to get them on a silly animated show. So they tried their best to keep it respectful. And again, it was interesting that they got close.
But no cigar.
And this, I do believe, was also right during the time that they were at war with George H.W. Bush and Barbara Bush, who had openly declared in a speech that America needs to be more like the Waltons and less like the Simpsons.
That very well could have played into the fact that everyone turned it down as well.
I do believe so. Well, let's go ahead and cut it right there for now. That is going to do it for this week's episode of Best Darn Diddly and our review of Krusty Gets Kancelled. It's not quite the end of Season 4 for us yet, though.
So hold your racetrack horses.
We're going to get to that real soon. But first, Richie, what would you like to plug this week?
As always, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at theWizKid23. Also, while you're on Twitter, go ahead and give our show a follow as well. That's at Best Darn Diddly. That's DIDDLY.
And I am at MrMostDaysOff. That works pretty much everywhere. For those of you that are not on Twitter or Instagram, you can contact us at bestdarndiddly@gmail.com. And of course, you can keep up with everything at bestdarndiddly.com. As for next week, the next episode we're going to be reviewing is Homer's Barbershop Quartet. But we're going to make you wait a week for that because it's time for the return. It's the Season 4 finale. Spectacular. The WizKid and I will be reflecting on our overall feelings about Season 4, talking about some of the high points, some of the low points, and of course, my sleepless nights will finally come to an end for now when I will be forced to declare my top 5 favorite episodes from Season 4. Richie's going to do it as well, but he's probably already finished it by now.
He's going to do his Selma's Choice.
That's right. Keep it. As always, thank you so much for listening to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. The WizKid and I look forward to being with you again next week for the Season 4 Finale Spectacular.
That was a good episode, man. That episode should hold over all those little SOBs. I got you!
Until next time, be cromulent to each other.
Did you think I thought we stopped recording?
I did. You fucking got me good. I was like, "Hey, dude, aren't you?" I was literally about to be like, "Aren't you forgetting something?" Oh, that's good, man. That was really good.
It's a dragon! Disengage! Toaster? They're fighting! I wonder which thing is gonna win.
Well, I know my thing can beat your thing.
Are you serious? A toaster can beat a dragon?
Toasters can get really hot.
Dragons breathe fire.
To see how this and other battles end, find My Thing Can Beat Your Thing on iTunes and Google Play, and send your Thing sightings to @ThingBeatsThing on Twitter. For MTCBYT News, I'm a news person.